Hello, and welcome to an intro to Anthro with two humans. I'm human number one, John McCray.
And I'm human number two, John Lehr.
And this is the podcast where we reassess what it means to be human. And the title of this episode is Look Ma, No Plans, What Improv Can Teach Us About Being Human.
All right. Finally, something that I know a little something about.
I know. I'm hoping to sit back a little bit on this one. But we have a very special guest with us.
We do. We'd like to welcome Susan Messing, the cornerstone of improv in Chicago and throughout the world. She's worked at multiple, you name an improv theater, she's performed in it. She's also been in the cast of Second City. She was one of the founders of the Annoyance Theater. She was, I think, one of the first Herald teams from I.O. Anyway, something like that. She goes way back. She's an amazing improviser. I perform with her when we travel, and it's just a delight. She's one of the most talented people I know, and I am so happy she's here. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Well, this would not be a very good time for me to tell you I need to plug my cord into the...
Oh, she's about to lose power. That's all right. It's Hey,
are you good?
We improvise here. We go with the flow.
Okay, well, I appreciate this, guys. Whoops.
Okay, there she goes.
These are my dog's bowl. I don't usually get props.
Susan Messing, everybody.
Yep, here she is improvising right now on how to get... You got it?
All right.
I think.
All right.
Okay, we'll go.
I thought this would be the topic of conversation. I did not know what it would be. Sometimes I do things because I know the thesis. Other times I just do something and discover why. And now I have. So this is all good.
And you're still here.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure and honor.
You are actually our very first visiting professor on an intro to Anthro with two humans.
That's disturbing. I'm sure you have. It sounds to me like you don't have much of a pile.
No, we do. We're very picky, and we just figure out how to do it technically.
Yeah. It took us over a year to do it.
Sure did.
And also, I wish we could. Yeah. Just cue that. That is always waiting for you, Mr. Lehr.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow, that hurts.
We used to have another one, but I lost it somehow. It was like a ba-da-da-da, and I lost it. I don't have it.
Like a football game, like da-da-da-da.
Yeah. It was a good one, and now I don't know. It never came back.
I don't know why.
Professor McCray, please continue.
Susan, first of all, thank you so much for being here, as we've said already. I wish we could pay you a stipend. We don't have any extra funds for a stipend. However, just so you know, this isn't a complete waste of your time. You will be getting a pair of socks and a friendship bracelet.
That's right.
Ooh, a friendship bracelet.
Yep. It's true from our sponsors.
Yeah.
Who are your sponsors?
Watson and Company Socks is a sock company that very good socks. I think you will like them. We'll provide the socks. And then also Puppies Not Piranhas provides the friendship bracelets for this show.
Puppies Not Piranhas. What?
It's on Etsy. It's an artist website, and they make friendship bracelets. And so they do a special, just like a fan art, do a special intro to Anthro bracelet.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
There you go.
Wow, look at that beautiful friendship bracelet.
Yeah.
I can feel the friendship through the screen.
Right.
You're going to have to shut the... Am I allowed to drop an F-bomb?
Hell yeah. Fuck yeah.
Shut the fuck up, Bitta. I have a dog that's a Shorkie. He's a horrible dog. Horrible breed. Should be bred out. I mean, speaking of anthropology, don't you guys sometimes dive into the section where breeds are unnecessary?
The DNA or
evolution, man. Sometimes it just ends, a line ends. And it could be the end of our line. We don't know.
And sometimes it's called murder. Yeah.
If you're if you're European, you have 4% Neanderthal DNA.
Ooh, I am European.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sometimes just like a Shorkie. Sometimes you get for example, me, I probably have more Neanderthal than most people do. But yeah, it's all genetics. It's all DNA.
It's all a roll of the dice.
Well, I'm the end of the messing line, so that's for sure.
Really?
Oh yeah, no boys.
Do you still go by Messing, or do you?
I would have had to change my name a couple of times. The first one is dead to me, and the second one is dead of my husband. So keeping Messing was probably, at the very least, a solid, easy way to get through life without having to go to the DMV a lot, right?
Plus, it's a great name. I mean, that Messing is a great name, I think.
Deborah Messing ruined it.
Yeah, that's true. She put a hitch in it, but still, it holds up.
I can't say she ruined it. She ruined it for me. She didn't ruin it. Somebody knew her at Brandeis, a friend of mine, and said she was a lovely person.
Yeah.
Where are the Messings? Are the Messings, where are they from? Austria, Germany? Where
we're Hungarian, Russian, and Polish, but chances are we weren't Russian, and just the borders kept shifting.
Interesting. Yeah.
Poland is a landlocked country that's going to get invaded again.
Ooh.
That's just my slight.
Yeah.
I've got a serious mosquito problem in here, so
I just thought you were clapping at my
clap, a really slow clap.
Los Angeles has been ruined by a new species of mosquitoes that are little. They're little, black, and they're really hard to get. And it's really ruined things here.
I thought you said that they're doing some sort of special mosquito.
Yes, they're trying to change the DNA of the males so that they can't impregnate the women, and if they do, it's only sterilized men. Anyway, there's a program underway to try to eradicate it, but obviously they haven't finished it because this guy's still in here.
Yeah, if they're trying to eradicate it like Chicago is trying to eradicate rats by bringing in coyotes, that didn't work. and then they brought in feral cats and encouraged them to hang out like people have cat stations at their home with heated mats and stuff. You're not supposed to talk to them or look them in the eye or something. You're supposed to ring a bell, which Pavlovianly, I just turned Pavlovian into a adverb.
It was good.
Pavlovianly, thank you, is supposed to make them eat but not bond with you.
Yeah, you don't want them to get soft. They're like prison guards. They can't get too close to the
That's not working either. So we're overrun by coyotes and feral cats and lots of rats. Everybody's living very well with each other.
Yeah, you still got the lake.
Chicago also, I think, introduced falcons into the city at one point to help stop the rat and mice problem.
I thought you were going to say Chicago put a man on the moon. But they didn't.
No.
You gave it that kind of weight.
Yeah. It's you'll find a lot of gravitas in this show that comes out of inappropriate times. So
a lot.
Susan, Mr. Lehr has already given your bio, and I actually pulled your bio off of one of the theaters where you were working.
Wait, how many years ago was it? Was my daughter 6 years old in the bio, or?
I don't know. I went just for the meaty parts, but I saw where you also you did a stand-up act with a puppet called Jolly.
Years and years and years ago,
and she was accepted to the Aspen Comedy Festival, which is really hard to get into. And
it no longer exists, honey.
Well, yeah. Well, comedy really no longer exists.
I did the tiniest bit of stand-up and just enough to really respect stand-ups. And I did a little. It was persona based. I don't think I could be me on stage. Still not. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. How about Jolly? What's up with Jolly now? What's Jolly working on?
You know what? Jolly would be nothing if I didn't have my hand up his ass. But he just got a mid-season replacement show on that. He's just doing fine.
We'll have to have Jolly on sometime. Maybe not by himself.
There's nothing like a kabuki puppet punching me to make you yearn for the days of
Yep.
Abbott and Costello. I don't know. It's good stuff.
The puppet punched her in the face
constantly.
Really?
Yeah,
I have a thing for clowns and puppets. Seem to be like a recurring theme in my career.
I have friends who do not like. I have friends who get viscerally, truly to the core upset if you show them a picture of a clown. My friend Kate Duffy can't handle it. Like, it's upsetting. Yeah.
We actually did a full episode on fear of clowns.
We sure did.
Why clowns? Why clowns specifically?
Well, what our episodes said was that you can't really tell because of the makeup. You can't. They're smiling, for example, but you can't tell their real intentions, and that seems to affect people on a subconscious level.
So, are they better if they're a sad clown?
Like, it's still, you don't know, even because it's always on their face. You don't know what.
Yeah, you can't read their facial expressions, obviously.
Yeah.
Didn't they heighten it? Like, good makeup just heightens your beauty as it is anyway?
I'll have to go back and listen to the episode again.
I feel bad. I missed that one.
Also, I too have traveled with Mr. Lehr to do shows. I've toured with shows. I've gone. We did our comedic lectures in New York, and then we had to go down to San Diego a few times.
Yes, and we also don't forget about the time you came to Los Angeles when Chris Hogan and I did our you came in that. We've traveled.
Good travelers together.
Yeah, but not like with Susan. Susan, I've logged some serious miles with.
Yeah, and Susan, I always found him a little bit of a prima donna when I was traveling with him. How is it with you? Has he grown out of that?
No, John's super easy to travel with. I'm surprised that John, he's sicker. He gets sickly.
Yeah, I'm a sickly person. We've discovered that. Yeah,
he gets sick, but not in a way that kind of prevents us from doing what we need to do.
It doesn't stop me. It just makes me not be able to enjoy it.
Look, I just did a cartwheel on stage, or I thought I was doing a Randolph. Then I thought I was doing a cartwheel, so I called it a cart off, and then I fucking pulled a muscle in my right butt cheek. So I am sad, and I am 60. So,
Susan did this on stage when we were just performing in Birmingham, England, and it was really funny. But she pulled a muscle in her butt by doing a cartwheel.
I went to PT today. I was ostensibly working on my feet problems, only to have him like spend the whole time, in my butt.
Yeah,
that doesn't sound right. But he was in the butt.
How far into the show did that happen? Was it
first scene?
I did it again.
Then she did it again towards the end of the show.
Oh no!
No, I did it that same scene, John.
Oh really?
I fucked it up and then did it again.
God. That's professionalism.
Let me pull a muscle and then let me pull it more just to make sure how wrong I am.
Did the audience laugh?
Yeah, they didn't know I was in pain. You don't want to scare an audience.
You gotta the show must go on.
Yeah. As long as you got the laugh, that helps. Yeah. That's a solace.
Oh, it was hilarious. It was worth it, in my opinion.
Was it?
Yeah. It was worth the injury. It was funny as hell.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. So one more thing before does John still eat a banana before every performance?
No, he hasn't done it. In Europe, you eat weird stuff.
Yeah.
So John ate a Snickers before one show in Bulgaria.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you do that.
A Snicker in Bulgaria, that's a banana. A Snickers is a banana in Bulgaria.
Well, you also said there was something else you said you liked eating before a show, banana and something else.
A BLT. I used to have a BLT.
Yeah.
A banana. But I'd have a BLT and then head to the theater, and then I'd have a banana backstage and some Tums. Always some Tums and lots of cigarettes because I miss the cigarettes.
I can't really eat before a show, which means that at 9 or 10 you're eating a thick Bulgarian meal of meat and cabbage.
Yes.
Ooh.
Mm.
Ooh. Mm.
Well, on my day off in Bulgaria, I discovered I was literally full of shit and spent the day getting rid of my first 5 days of Bulgaria.
That was a banner day on the tour.
Thankfully, you were not there yet.
Oh, right. But I
It's
heard
'cause
about it.
Because when you have to shit yourself, like the kind that you're like sobbing naked on a cold tile floor,
Yeah.
nobody's there to hold your hair. Not for them. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like you had to throw up. It's you're going to poop yourself.
Yeah.
How was it afterward? They called it pooforia, right? Where afterwards you just feel like you've had an out of body experience or something.
I think afterwards I'm so relieved because I'm literally like drooling and like pooping myself. And then, I mean, not in my pants. I mean, I'm in a specifically designated location for it. But afterwards, I'm kind of like, oh, thank God. And then I go and live my life as though that didn't happen. I think I get a lot of warnings that I just don't listen to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just had my post-European poop, and that's a good poop. When you know, once you settle back into the proper time zone and everything's back to normal.
Yeah, familiar toilets.
Yeah. But, you know, they had bidets out there, and, you know, I tried the bidet.
Yeah, he was very happy with the bidet.
Loved it. I had a problem with it in Sofia, Bulgaria. I had a misfire.
It went all over the bathroom.
But after that, I got it. Here's the bracelet you're going to get.
Wow.
Isn't it fancy?
I can't believe I get to be part of your club.
Oh, yeah. All right, so let's get into this.
Okay. So, Susan, at this point, you are probably asking yourself why. Why did they invite me on this show?
I kind of know now. now I get it. I mean, I'm slow, but I'm not that slow.
Yeah. But you know, obviously, John and I, over the course of the last year, we've been thinking a lot about humans and human evolution and what makes us human. And I feel that improvisation gave our prehistoric ancestors certain advantages as they were coming up through the evolutionary ranks, for example. And in other words, the ability to create, adapt, and respond on the fly to whatever happens in the environment would make it easier for them to survive. And I'm definitely not the first person who's ever come up with this idea. In his book, The Evolution of Imagination, Stephen T. Asma, who's a philosophy professor. Asma.
Oh boy, that poor guy in high school. Hey, Asma! You know they just tore him a new one. Sorry, go ahead.
But he wrote a book. He's a philosophy professor at Columbia College in Chicago. And he discusses improvisation and its importance to human evolution. And then in the book Truth and Comedy, Sharna Halper and Del Close and Kim Johnson also discuss...
That's a drinking game.
She knows all those people really well.
I do.
But they discuss like the basic human nature that's found in improvisation or that's explored in improvisation. And then there's also been academic researchers such as Andrew Landau and Charles Lim who have written about improvisation and the evolution of the human brain.
Wow.
But from an anthropological standpoint, I've come to the conclusion that improvisational theater is the culmination of 3 million years of human evolution. And it's a living real-time demonstration of all the characteristics and traits that made humans unique and successful as a species.
Oh my God, we're all going to die.
Now listen, if anybody uses this theory out there, and I'm talking to you improvisers, because every improviser has to write a goddamn book in order to make ends meet. If you better quote Mr. McCray when you rip him off here.
Well,
you can rip me off. I don't care about ripping me off. Just give me a quote in there.
Yeah.
I'll have you write my book. That's fine with me.
But anyway, we needed an improv master to explore this hypothesis. And so that's why we've reached out and you agreed to be here.
Yeah, I did, but I had no idea that was the reason. And now that you called me a master, I'm just getting concerned.
I would even say she's a grandmaster. I would go above master. I mean, everywhere we go in Europe, people stop all the time and like, Susan, oh my God. They love her. I mean, she's known all over the world.
You're like the Marcel Marceau
Yes,
of improvisers.
that is exactly right.
Speaking of clowns, I get a lot of students who did a lot of clowning, and mime, and sometimes they're all like, I'm like, just put the bags down, put the fucking bags down.
Don't overdo it. Just yeah.
I can't even move right now without my ass cheek hurting. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I actually, we've talked about it before, John. I got to sit in on a master's seminar with Marcel Marceau.
Really?
This is a good story.
Yeah, I'm not a mime, but I helped put in the floor because he wanted a new floor in the space up in Evanston. So I helped put in the floor. And for my payment, they said you could come to the master seminar. So I sat in, me and a bunch of people from like the Alliance Française in Chicago, and then a bunch of mimes out there too. And the one thing I learned from that is when the audience gets bored, just do the flying bird, and that perks everybody back up.
Yeah. But wasn't he kind of a pain in the ass? Like he started a thing and then had to start all over?
Oh, in his performance, he did that. Yeah, he had set something up, and then this was on stage down in the Loop at one of the theaters, and then he forgot to like set something up, so he had to start the whole thing over again. But yeah, but I didn't know anything about miming really, and then he described it like a martial art. And like how you control your energy and creating energy and manipulating it. And when he did that, then I suddenly got it. And now I have like a lot of respect for mimes.
You should see Professor McCray try to get out of a glass to a cube. It is amazing. Like you see it.
Yeah.
You see it.
Before I even touch the sides, I sit down and I think about it for a while. So I make the chair and then I sit.
And we're already starting to see it. We just don't know it yet.
I could imagine that would be fascinating, kind of like a car accident or Christian TV. And it's like, I'd watch that shit. I'd watch it.
So basically, let's start out with just how do you guys, and John, this is for you too. Don't think that you're, getting off tonight because we have a guest on. You don't get to like leave. Don't leave in the middle of this and go have a smoke or something.
Oh, man.
Playing with John Lehr is bucket list as an improviser, I must say. It was.
Is it?
Yeah, it really is. It's fucking amazing to play with John.
Well, likewise, we're really good together.
Yeah, John
really good.
John tells everyone we're a delightful couple.
We are a delightful couple. It's true.
It's like giving yourself a nickname. You can't.
Yeah.
You just can't do that.
Well, we are, and everybody so far has agreed. So there you have it.
Well, I've always found Mr. Lehr to be hilarious from the moment I first met him. So, and now it is 50 some odd years later, or 40 some odd years later that he still makes me laugh. So I'm glad to hear that. I understand that. So,
yeah.
So how would you guys, how do you define for your classes, for example, how do you define improvisation?
I say it's like make believe, but with adult sensibilities, and if you're lucky, a piano player.
Yeah.
You know what? I feel like and maybe it's just my job when I'm a teacher, at least, is to demystify this, make it easy. And I think a lot of people have tried to make this very difficult in order to justify the popularity of it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's my niche. I like working with a frustrated improviser. I don't like beginners. I don't like, now what should I do with my career? I like when they want to rip out their hair in large tufts.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that.
And she's very good at speaking to them, and she teaches a class where she just takes questions from improvisers on what problems they're having and different issues. I guess my definition of improv would be enjoying the not knowing, really, truly enjoying it.
That sounds not dual.
Well, yes, it's a bit non-dual.
Frans says I'm non-dual, and I don't even understand what.
She just exudes non-dualism. She just is.
I don't know what that means, Spunky.
How did you discover improv?
I went to Northwestern. I was a theater major, and I was a terrible actress even after I graduated. But I was unintentional comedy the whole time. Like if you saw me play Lady Macbeth or Cleopatra, like the asp, and people would be like, you know, bless her heart, the Southern version.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember my sophomore year, I auditioned for something called the Meow Show that John did.
Yeah.
Did not get cast,
Which is criminal.
which is interesting because the producer of the show that year was this English dude named Dan Patterson, who ended up creating Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah.
And then my junior year, I auditioned for a Herald team at a place called Improv Olympics, and I didn't get that either. But when I graduated from Northwestern, I was doing comedies at Northwestern, but I wasn't doing like what I would end up doing.
Right.
But when I graduated, I remembered that place called Improv Olympic, which we couldn't call that anymore because the Olympic Committee goes
Oh,
after
really?
The International Olympic
Oh,
Committee
no.
sued
Oh, no.
a little
do.
theater in Chicago.
They sue dry cleaners. They sue,
Yeah.
like diners. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so stupid. So I auditioned. I went back to that place after I graduated, and I said, maybe I'll take a class there. And
Yeah.
it changed the entire trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
I
Did you know it?
immediately-
You knew
I
it
knew
immediately?
I knew it
Yeah.
immediately because I was like, wow, there's this thing that you don't have to bastardize and ruin Ibsen and Shakespeare and Chekhov. Like you can just say shit and never have to say it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, like I was just a bad actress. That's all there was to it. But Northwestern had a loophole that they couldn't kick you out for a lack of talent. It's true. It's true because you didn't audition to be in there. I was a theater cherub the summer between my junior and senior year. There's a program at Northwestern and National High School Institute where they call you cherubs because I guess we're anything but. And they had them in music and forensics and a bunch of stuff. And they had it in theater. And my mother had been a journalism cherub. So she suggested that I apply. And I think that was my entree into Northwestern because they sort of knew me from that summer. A lot of my friends, Amy Benedict, a bunch of people who are at Northwestern were cherubs with me. And I knew them even before we got to school. It was great. But again, even the Northwestern, the theater majors class of 86 always has the reunion at my house, which they act like I'm doing them such a favor. I'm just like, I get a pass out at my own house. It's the best thing ever. But every time we have a reunion, they have it here. So it's not like they hate me. It's just that I had to take the doggy door to continue to be an artist because I would have never lasted in theater because improv has made me a much better actress, but it's not my regular thing. I want to make it up and then leave. I want to discover it now and then leave.
How were you when you were a child or growing up? Did you
I
make believe, imaginative?
I had three choices that I gave myself for a career. I was either going to be a hockey goalie, knowing full well that's not going to happen. Hockey goalie or a swimming coach makes no rational sense.
Yeah.
Or I'd be an actress. So that was where I sort of went to. And my mother was too polite to say, I really wish you would be a child psychologist. To fit better in this.
You have the toughness and the focus to be a goalie, but you're very, very small.
Because I have a thing in my butt. Yeah.
But she's also very small. She's very short. So you just need girth to block that net,
Yeah, but modern goalies, if you look at their pads, they've got like a lot of shit closed that didn't used to be closed. Like if you look on the inside of the pads, they now have these new flaps.
Yes.
Remember we looked online at that?
Yes, we did. Yes.
Yeah. I'm a Rangers fan, a lifer. That's the only sport and the only thing. Yeah.
That's great. My mom used to date the head of the fan club for the Kansas City Red Wings, which was like it was the farm team for the Detroit Red Wings.
Of course it was.
Yeah.
I've just never heard Kansas City having anything like that.
Yeah, at the time they did. And so he used to give my mom tickets all the time. So I'd go there with my mom and it was like Slapshot. So I'd be there with my mom, just like watching guys get beat up and
what a great
blood
movie.
on the glass and everything.
We just Slapshot. a year and a half ago to see
Yeah.
if it still held up, and it does.
Yeah.
A few comments make you wince, but the rest of it is just as beautiful and funny as it was in
the whole story, the world is so good. The world that
Yes.
they created.
Yeah.
It is a really good movie.
John,
I highly recommend that.
how did you come to improv, John? Do you feel like you were born an improviser, or did you come to?
I mean, I didn't realize it. I was born an improviser, and what I was doing with you in high school was improv.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know it, you know. And then I was in forensics, which is not, police work, discovering a dead body and getting evidence. It's actually speech. I don't know why it's called forensics, but there was an event that they sometimes had, which was called improv duet acting. And you would have a partner and you'd pick a topic, and then you'd have 30 minutes to make up a sketch, like or a story.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It was great. And then same as Susan, I went to Northwestern. Somebody told me about the Meow Show. I auditioned, and
got in.
And I got in, and that changed my life. I could not believe that you could say whatever you wanted on stage. I couldn't believe it. It was fantastic.
Were you you were a skinny little wiry kid, right?
Yes.
I feel like your sense of humor probably saved your fucking ass in high school, right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, and hanging out with Professor McCray, because he's a badass. He's little too. But boy, you don't want to mess with Professor McCray.
That's what I heard about you, John.
I just don't care.
Yeah. And he's got a head made out of cement.
So that leads me to my next question, which was, what appeals, and you both kind of answered that already about what appeals to you about improvisation, but how has improv affected your life, like your day-to-day life, your real life?
Well, it certainly helped me become a better parent, don't you think, John?
Yeah, that's good. That's true.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't get stuck in your ways. I mean, I think a lot of people need a template in life, or they have maybe some plan in their life as the way things should go. I have to be married at a certain time, a baby at whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever people think their version of success is. So they kind of lay it out and hopefully fulfill that thesis. I sort of didn't. I sort of discovered things along the way, and that's kind of improv in general on stage. So in life, when something would just unfold and I would let it, even today, I had no idea what I was going to be doing here.
Right.
And I was right. But there's no other reason to put me. Yeah. Let's talk about obstetrics and gynecology.
Yeah.
I would agree with what you're saying, though, about being flexible with your kid. And I would also say I discovered I was a writer and that I could write good dialogue. And I just, that all came from improv, I think.
I write with a gun to my head, but when I do,
it's good. I've read her stuff. She's an excellent writer. So is Professor McCray. Both of you are. There's, a lot to exploit on this podcast.
He is brilliant.
Yes. It is true.
Kim Johnson in Truth and Comedy says that real improv involves constant experimentation and exploration. And that kind of reminded me of, again, prehistoric humans, in a sense of, like, when you think of prehistoric hominids, you think of them going out and trying different foods, sticking things in their mouth and seeing what works and what doesn't work.
Improv has to be involved in cheese. I mean, who was the first person that ate that moldy crap and was like, this is amazing?
That's an interesting thought. I know Kim, his name is, I call him Howard.
Yeah.
And he spent much of his career was spent with the Pythons, Monty Python and the guys.
Oh,
he
really?
helped them write their books. He has been personal assistance to them. He has produced with them. And it's kind of interesting that taking his perspective on that and kind of read the quote again that he said.
He said, real improv involves constant experimentation and exploration.
Well, he was an early Del acolyte. As a matter of fact, he wrote the book about Del.
Del Close. She's referring to Del Close, one of
funniest
seminal director, teacher, improviser.
crazy guy, fantastic but crazy. I knew Del too, but Howard knew him really, really well.
Hey, Susan.
That's a really good
Susan.
He was from Kansas as well, right?
He was.
You should break the fourth wall. You know.
Oh my God, you're scaring me. You're really good, Del. But now I forgot my point about.
Sorry.
Howard. I don't know. I don't remember.
No, it was about the Monty Python guy and how
Howard was one of the earliest.
Yeah, but he was on Baron's Barracudas, which was the original. It was like the first breakout team of the Improv Olympic was his team.
Yeah.
And Del kind of coached them. And what Del would do is kind of come up with a new form with them, experimentation, the whole 9 yards. And then Del, once he kind of cracked that code, went on to something else. He didn't like to codify shit like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that because Howard comes from that generation, which is kind of right before my generation, I can see where I guess we were all experimenting all the time. We just didn't know it. We just thought we were playing.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, there improv in the early 90s, I believe went through a kind of a
came in 86, honey.
What's that?
I came in 1986.
I know, but a little bit later after you were in early days. But what I'm saying is right around the late 80s, early 90s, improv kind of went through a renaissance in Chicago, a really cool thing, not just in the presentation of it, but also in the venues. Like it was in theaters a little bit more and different spaces. And there was all of this small theater stuff happening at that time. It still is, but at that time it was like really on.
As an art form itself, and I think your group, Ed, and a bunch of people made it, certainly gave it a chunk of integrity. Second City and IO always had this kind of fight. At the IO, you were creating art for art's sake, and it was its own art. And Bernie Solins over at Second City had this fight with Del over at Improv Olympics, where Bernie thought it was used as a function to help create sketch.
Yeah.
But that it wasn't an art form in and of itself. And
yeah.
And Del was like, go fuck yourself. And then Bernie was standing on Del's oxygen lines right before he died, like in this big party they threw. And Bernie was condescendingly kind and said, well, for tonight, it's an art form. And I'm like, you're standing on his oxygen lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel in your own work that you guys do now? Do you feel that you're still exploring or experimenting with what you're doing? Do you still, and what are some of the ways that you do it, or some of the?
Everything is always a grand experiment. I mean, we travel all over the world, not just in the States. And what I've discovered is, I think people really want to codify it in their home. You get a lot of, it's a Tim Burton, wrapped around, or it's a Sondheim thing, or this is the way we do this thing. And I guess the longer I've been an improviser, the more excited I am about how formless our show is. Sometimes it's sweet, but sometimes it's chaotic. It's kind of like when I make a noodle pudding, a noodle kugel. You think that you're going to make a big major mistake. You put it in the pan and you're like, that is slop. That is completely wrong. You put the cornflakes on, you put it in the oven for an hour, and it comes out, and you're like, shut the fuck up. It's a noodle pudding.
Yeah. She makes a mean noodle pudding, I will say.
It's anything I cook that's perfect. But it is. It's a damn good noodle pudding. But the point being is that it ends up, no matter what, looking like a one-act comedy, and I don't know how we did it. I mean,
right.
John laughs at me because I have come out of a show saying, "Oh my God, you guys, there was a lean cuisine in every scene." And everybody's like, "You did that, Susan."
Yeah, you put it in every scene.
No, it's magic, right? I mean, I'm such an idiot. Like, it still feels like magic to me, even though I know it's all placement. It's about using and reusing, recycling and repurposing everything you said and did or noticed in a show. Like, everything could become very important, and you just don't know what it is or how it is. And then after the show, we'll sometimes look at each other and go, what was our theme again? Because the theme, even then the theme of the show, we'll get a suggestion from the audience. It's an initiation. It's just beginning. So it's kind of like a really good road trip. Like, I guess the way I see improv in the world is people are like almost like putting a gun to your head saying, finish your Thanksgiving dinner. We've got to be at the Ice Capades in 3 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus me, I would rather just get in a car with my bestie, great weed, salty and sweet snacks, and 3 free days. That's what I would like. I'd like to go on a road trip versus I want to fulfill this thesis. And a lot of people are trying to control improv now.
Yes. Which is so antithetical to what it is,
but they learned, I know why it happened. They learned from someone they absolutely respected and loved, and they didn't want to fuck up that person, that thing that gave them the epiphany.
Right.
And with a lot of respect. But I love Mick Napier so much. He was my teacher and my director, but even then I wouldn't dare want to copy what he said. There were certain things he said to me that resonated so well that it became almost a thesis of how I share that, but it's not mixed shit. It's I don't teach anybody else's exercises. I made up mine all high in my tub years ago. Or
you make them up all the time. You make them up all the time.
Like I'll be on the train with John and say I just made up an exercise. Yeah.
The only thing I would add to Susan about what the exploration, the continuing change and looking for newness in our work is, for me, it's become, and this, I was totally not into this when I was younger and doing it, but it's really about intimacy now, and for me, it's about really communicating with her or learning from her or connecting with her on a really kind of intimate level that gets me fired up.
Yeah.
Oh my. Well, for me, it's a sociological study of the human condition, good, bad, and ugly. So I think anthropology and sociology go well together, don't they? It's like,
yes.
Yeah.
Like chocolate and peanut butter.
Is what when you mentioned that people are trying to control it, is that trying to control it with the game, with the form, or how is it trying to control it?
I remember Mick once taught us a form. He had gotten a note from the Chicago Improv Festival or somewhere that the annoyance was just too loose and crazy. So he was like, "Oh yeah," like Mick takes everything as a
challenge
and a threat. So he created this form that was so complicated that I'm not exaggerating too much if I say if somebody said the word "the," then 2 people would have to go downstage left. Like, there were all these weird internal clues, and then if somebody asked a question, one of the chairs went away, and then somebody went down stage. It was crazy. At the time, Mick is the kind of guy who, like, any one of your hobbies could become your vocation. Like, he got interested in electricity and all of a sudden was rewiring our building. Like, he just can do that shit. So at the time, he was really interested in math. And so there were all sorts of 8.5 by 11 yellow notebooks all over the theater. And each page, each 8.5 by 11 page held a math problem, and one math problem for the whole page. And finally, I was so confused from these rehearsals, I just picked up one of his math problems and I said, "Is this our show?" And then I quit. It was the only time I've ever quit in my life. Because my little left brain, my brain could not handle more than enjoying what the fuck was right in front of us. But I will say this, and I've said this more than once in my life. I've probably said all this shit before, but I've said nobody comes to a show and says, "So many bells and whistles, I understood none of it. Bravo." So I don't care about the bells and whistles. I care about the people. If they see a character and they see the character again, they're like, "Oh my God, there's Janice. I loved her. She's back."
Yeah, it comes that's where your talent is. You don't need any form or structure. You have it. You're in the flow. You're like a jazz musician who you don't need to look at the charts. You just know it, and it's great to be around.
Oh, honey, I appreciate. Look, I appreciate that. My validation is someone took their hands off their dicks, closed the computer, got in a lift, and got in the seats.
Yeah.
I don't need the light of the laugh to affirm me. I think, it's a plosive release of tension. So when they do laugh, there's a bit of thank God, just because it's comedy is the result, but that's
Yeah.
not the goal. It's sort of like the consequence of commitment and recommitment to your choices instead of funny choices.
Yeah.
Because if the only way to heighten funny is to be funnier, and that's tough. So I'm always surprised and delighted at what tickles the audience is what tickles John and me as well. Because
Right.
there's one show that we did, the one in Bremen, John.
Yes.
We did a show where
that
he was with this huge stage. The theater was so new; it's had new theater smell. I've never seen that.
We've never been in any, because we've always been in theaters are skanky backstage,
or bars,
particularly.
Or
they're just nasty because actors have just been sitting there and smoking and whatever. And this place was like getting in a brand new car. It was unreal.
Like had the fancy German toilets. You touched the mirror and it lit up and told you how many minutes till showtime. I mean,
the mirror told you how many minutes till curtain. It was crazy. It was insane.
So we were on stage and it was a huge stage, and John was a pilot. And I guess I was a woman. Not only was I guess I was your flight attendant, but I was also a woman who was giving birth in the plane.
God, so how do you remember that?
John delivered a baby, and then he wanted to save the placenta, but then there was a plane crash, and the placenta flew out of the plane. And I just kind of quietly set myself as a woman sunbathing, with one of those old like punch notes. I was hit in the face with a placenta. And it was just so satisfying to prove what John was saying. Like, if John makes a lot of funny jokes, and my job probably is to run around and prove them to be true. But John says he spends most of the show just watching me, which is not true.
That is true. That really is true.
It's not true.
I always thought, you watch about, everybody always talks about the Rat Pack and about how, hilarious they were. And you see it now and you're like, those guys really, I don't find them that funny. But it was something about seeing people enjoy themselves on stage.
Yeah.
And that to me is always like, if you make the game too hard that the actors are thinking too much and not enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
It's the audience is there. I mean, the audience is part of the whole experience. And if the audience can sense that people are unhappy on stage.
That improv is painful to watch.
Yeah.
The worst improv is as painful to watch as anything that is the worst and most painful thing to watch.
Yeah, we were in a show like that.
Yeah.
me and Mr. McCray. It was just so complicated. It was horrid.
Again, why? I mean, if this is supposed to be improvised, why do we have to hold on so hard to a form that might not be working? I mean, even when I do coach teams, I always encourage them to play to their strengths.
Yeah.
And my strength is noticing everything, and John notices everything. So, yeah.
So, moving on from that, I remember when I lived in Chicago and we were doing theater in Chicago, it was always fun that you would see people from different groups. So you would identify, that he's with or she's with Improv Olympic. Oh, they're with Looking Glass. Oh, and it almost seemed like at that time back in the 80s and 90s that it was, it reminded me of the movie The Warriors, with almost like different gangs. You know what I mean? When you'd see like, And so my question is, do you feel that different improv companies or different theater companies have different cultures about them? When you've traveled now, you've gone into different places. Do you get like a different sense of how they do things?
Of commonalities, I think.
Yeah.
I think wherever you go, an improv community is probably some of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
Some of them don't want to become performers or comedians. Some of them merely need community or want to feel more comfortable in their skin. A lot of people are using improv who have social anxieties or are on the spectrum. They kind of use improv to develop and kind of watch social skills and to see if they can kind of model them. But improv is being used for so much other shit. Like Sharna went to CERN.
Yeah, really?
Sharna went to CERN to work with the super collider folks because apparently they don't get along very well. And when you probably collaborate a bit.
Oh, I wish that had been filmed.
I bet was.
That's
I know,
fascinating.
I think
That's
Peter
fascinating.
Gwynn wrote her speeches for that. I don't know. It was insane. But that's what started blowing my mind, is that
Yeah.
it was helping people with Alzheimer's stay in the moment. It wasn't just helping John with his scripts. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it had far more profound consequences that I or John or anybody who started in the 80s or 90s or 2000s didn't think that this was going to go this far. I mean, I could see my mom sort of looking at me with stink eye like, "Oh shit, your vocation has integrity." Versus, I mean, I'm teaching at the fucking University of Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they fucking created the atom bomb. I'm teaching Make-em ups. And I used to joke as a child that I worked for Radcliffe, but I called it Raffical. And I
Yeah.
used to joke and say that I taught cheerleading at Raffical. I mean, that's pretty much what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but well, this episode is you've brought us right back to the episode, because this
Exactly.
idea of improvisation is the core element of it. True improv, truly getting in that flow state that now they're talking about, is something that's very desirable. I mean,
well, when my sister Bonnie was absolutely brilliant. She went to Yale and Harvard Business School, and at the way that you went to business school at the time was ultimately to be in middle management or whatever you ended up doing with it. You know, your degree and whatever would help you, but that's where you sort of landed. Now people are all doing startups, and they don't want to be a lot of Americans don't want to go to business school and go into middle management. They want to start their own company, and now they have to learn how to collaborate. And that whiteboard becomes huge. And I don't care if you say the stupidest shit. If you say something stupid and somebody takes the tiniest element out of it and says, you know, that stupid thing, but not saying that. But I mean, I used to joke with Sharna. I'm like, oh, when you said the word "the," it totally inspired me to think of X.
Right.
Then my plan would get implemented, and I didn't give a shit that I gave her all the credit because it got implemented.
And that's the skill or the art that AI is going to have a really difficult time participating in,
because they can't understand the nuance,
the flow state, that I mean, I'm sure someday they will, and then they'll kill all of us and we'll be dead. But it's not, AI is not. It has to reference stuff that's already been created, and it can't create completely new, fresh thought. And I think that's where improv is going to continue to save us in our evolution.
It is, and it's not. This is where I feel like the saturation is so much right now that it reminds me of almost that kind of bad joke of a stand-up comedian on a brick wall, you know what I mean, in the 80s. But at the same time, stand-up's making a resurgence. I don't know. I mean, I feel like when I look at class offerings online for improv, now it's almost like a beautiful woman in a field of poppies who, you know, only good things happen to her class. You know what I mean? Like it's become this weird, like, what can you handle class? And sometimes people are like, I give you the hard note class. And I'm like, oh, I just want to play.
Well, I'm not really talking about how it's used in improv theater and improv comedy. I'm more talking about how it's used in, just in humankind.
No, it's interesting. In the book, The Creative Spark, How Imagination Made Humans Exceptional, Agustin Fuentes says that humans have evolved to be super cooperators. And so that's what you're talking about, is like when you're improvising, I think it's referred to as agreement, but it's actually cooperating with each other, right? When you're in a group.
It's creating a language that supports the continuation of conversation. For example, somebody would lowball me on the part of me that used to get offended if someone lowballed me for a job or something.
Yeah.
Now I get to say, because I've learned through improv, I get to say, that's a really interesting concept that doesn't work for me. Why don't we regroup and see how we can make it work? So I'm continuing the conversation through a semantic adjustment that I learned from improv, because if you say to somebody you should do something, there's a little oppositional disorder in all of us that says, no, I shouldn't, and I should probably do something fucking else because you shouldn't be telling me what the fuck to do. But if I say I have a suggestion, who doesn't want to listen to the suggestion? And that was a semantic structure that Mick brought into our rehearsals that worked really well, and that I find when people have meetings and they're not getting along well, that when I have them reframe the semantic structure, they all of a sudden are hearing everybody just fine,
Oh, that's great.
Nobody gets offended either. That's interesting.
That might be your power cable.
It is my power cable, and I'm sorry about it. I don't know why it's doing that. Maybe I'm going to undo it for a while.
Do you still have juice though? Do you still have
a lot of juice here?
Okay.
All right.
Got half the juice.
All right. You're good.
How does that manifest itself when you're on stage? I mean, now you're doing the two of you, but if you were in a large group of people, say a cast of 9, how does that cooperation manifest itself on stage?
It's easy because you're only responsible for 1/9 of it. That's at the least, but at the most, you look. For me, we have all these phrases in improv that can come off really pithy and stupid, especially when you say these phrases and then it doesn't happen. Phrases like "got your back" right before a show, only to leave someone out there to die.
Or yes and.
Yes, and which I will agree on fact, but I can have my own opinion. I mean, but I guess the part of me that probably has oppositional disorder, it literally makes me look for opportunities to collaborate with people. So if I want to connect with people, now I do things that connect me to people. So I will join in on an action, or if I hear someone initiate something and I know somebody else didn't hear it, I'm going to amplify that to make their shit more important. It's almost like the person who gives you the assist is actually scoring the goal in improv. Because
I like that.
Initiating something is whatever. It's when someone turns it into a game, or as I really say, a fact, that's when it becomes important. The first time you say it, it's a fart and run. The second time it's, ooh, I farted. Wait. Burritos, no cheese. Wait. Fire sauce. Wait. Taco Bell. Wait. And Clybourne. Stay there. In your fart.
Yeah. It's Fuentes also said, he talks about diversity and challenge.
Yeah, he talks a lot, doesn't he?
He talks about how conflict helps us maintain our imagination. And most people, he says, assume that conflict is bad and being in one's comfort zone is good. How do you feel? Do you find yourself going to a comfort zone when you're...
I don't want to. I try not to, but you can't help it. If you've done thousands and thousands of improv shows, there are times in your life after 38 years of doing it that you're like, have I been here before? And it feels like cheating. And you don't want to, I don't like feeling that way. So I try not to, but there are things that I like doing that I can't help it. If I find a mic backstage, microphone.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
Really?
You'll find me deep throating that microphone so fast it'll make your head spin because I don't get props. So when I find one, John pulled out of the Birmingham show. He went backstage and started throwing real cables on the stage, and then a little cart thing, which I ended up becoming a quadriplegic, and I in the cart. Because I was like, I got to use this now.
But I think we should say that you weren't making fun of quadriplegics. You were playing a character who happened to be quadriplegic. And Susan, oftentimes, in fact, she just performed at Lincoln Center with a quadriplegic actor improviser whose name I just forgot.
Patrick Thornton.
And they were incredible. Together. So
what John didn't tell you is we are literally in the basement. We are underneath a concrete platform.
Lincoln Center is Lincoln Center.
Well,
it has the same address.
It has the same address. It's going on the resume as Lincoln Center.
couldn't hear each other. It was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. But Michael Patrick Thornton is a brilliant improviser.
Amazing.
One of my joys. He's a joy.
I just wanted to make sure people didn't think you were making fun of a quadriplegic, because you were not.
No, I was playing one.
You were playing.
How about because one of the things they talk about too is that prehistoric humans obviously dealt with failure a lot. And probably most of where we've got today is probably based on more failure than successes.
Run from a dinosaur? What? Yeah. Failure to launch?
Yeah. Or don't climb up a tree when saber-toothed tigers are after you. That's not a good move, because they can get up the tree too.
The millions of years it took to actually chip a stone into have a sharp edge, for example.
Oh my God.
They probably didn't have the language or a therapist to express their discomfort.
Right. So
mistakes
how is
in improv are gasoline. It's a gift.
Mistake is a gift.
Yeah.
If a recycled mistake is your greatest comic gift.
It really is. If you call somebody by the wrong name in an improv set, now you suddenly have to justify why you've called them two different names. And then this whole other thing comes from that. So I think improv theater is a heightened demonstration of what improv is in our daily lives, but it does show, I think, that mistakes are positive, which we all know, but out in the real world, we get locked down into this idea that, I can't make mistakes. And honestly, I think that's a lot of what's wrong with improv. You say somebody that you do improv, most people roll their eyes and like, oh my God, I don't want, if I see another improv show, because improv has, I think you're afraid to completely let go. And so you automatically create handles, or what Susan's calling form, to sort of make it more successful, more, the odds are more in your favor.
Look, it might be their passion. Like, I don't want to yuck someone's yum.
No, but what I'm saying is that
I do, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have. Look, I can understand also the feeling of if it gets people in the seats, and that they get to have just enough risk, to like, it's going to be new, but knowing fully well that it's got these beats.
It's not the true improv that we're talking about, where as people out in the world, we are improvising all the time.
And I like the fact that like, if I make a mistake now and it's embarrassing for me, it's just unintentional.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I do. I really do. And laughter is a connecting device that, I mean, one of the nice things about being a citizen of the world when we go around places is you realize that language doesn't stop you from connecting as well. And people really looked for an opportunity to connect with us. And also, you also go through, what people do to fight to express themselves, whether it's a political regime. When I go to Poland, I often say, how are you doing? And they're like, not so much right now. And that means that they're going to have, their social satire is going to be a little bit, stuck in a piece of cheese.
Well, when we were in Austria, the right had just, taken.
It's called a Freedom Party. It's their Nazi party.
Yeah.
Freedom Party.
So, all in the label.
Free, doesn't it?
Super far right party had just taken hold, and that has a lot to do with how their improv is. For sure.
They also said that, and they love the way that John and I play with abandon, but you get people who are very, like, the English have their own kind of stylistic way of doing. It's like similar between Benny Hill and, Shaw. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, there's this weird balance there. And then in Norway, when John and I've been there twice together, and I went another time as well, they love the way we play with abandon, but there's a Norwegian phrase that roughly translates into something like, why do you make yourself so big? You make yourself smaller.
Wow.
So people are fighting societal bullshit. Or you live in fucking Bulgaria, man, you better like be grounded as fuck. So whimsy is not exactly in the cards that you pull right away. but at the same time, they've in Europe, I also feel like they've turned it into a very beautiful art.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the States that we sort of ignore. We stand around on the sides, ironically, in our, plaid shirts, as I'm wearing a plaid shirt, but like, and I'm just too cool for school. But then you get these beautiful, gorgeous, physically driven, gorgeous shows in Europe as well that are all improvised.
And
That
they're
they
fascinated by it. There's a
Yeah.
real energy happening
It's
there.
a lifelong learning there. I
Yeah.
don't get that feeling in the States. I
Yeah.
get in the States that's like, okay, you're done. Now you do your shows, and hopefully,
Get on
you just
TV.
you got your TV show.
Yeah. John, you mentioned earlier the idea of flow. And
Yeah.
I just want to ask you guys, when you feel that, what exactly is going on in your mind when you feel like you've hit the flow? Are you conscious of what's going on at the moment, or do you come off and just like, I don't remember anything at all?
Yeah, I don't. I just kind of, my mind is just like, I'm just
Yeah.
in this subconscious state. And if I have talent, that's where my talent lies. I'm able to access that very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's like video games. When you're playing a video game and you're just like kicking ass at the video game, it's that place where you're just, or athletes talk about it, or when you're typing, and you're typing and you're just, and the minute you think, oh wow, I'm typing really fast, that's when you make
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
mistake. So
Yeah.
it's, I don't know, Susan, how do you describe it? She's in flow most of the time.
Yeah.
I just, you know what? I'm too busy. It's like if you have a family member, or maybe you remember your grandparents who were depression babies, where you make a chicken and then you make a chicken soup,
Yeah.
and then you have to, then you take the chicken fat and smear it on a bagel.
Yeah.
I'm making wind chimes out of the bones.
Yeah.
So I'm using everything I have. That's usually in front of me because I feel like my internal monologue is dun 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 dun
Yeah.
dun. Like I feel like a cartoon. So I don't want to put too much time on me. Think like if I get in my head, I'm not with you.
So that's why our shows are so interesting, because she's dun 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 dun, and I'm woo, and together they go great together.
I'm out of my. I tried to get out of my head because then I don't notice all the incredible things that are going on, including ambient sound. I like to break the fourth wall. I always use. I extend the stage into the space, into the audience. Mick once joked with me. He goes, "Oh, you're going to break the fourth wall again?" And I said, "Give me a bigger theater. Maybe I won't."
Yeah.
You still would.
I fucking wall.
Yeah, that's what's really fun about playing with Susan. I've never played with a partner where we're using the entire space, including the audience. It's so,
that's very cool.
And you end up doing a cart off and
yeah. Well, small price to pay.
Well, listen, I don't want to keep you. I have one further question though, if that's all right. And that's just that. Do you ever find yourself sad that a world that you've created on stage has to end? In other words, at the end of the show, do you ever find yourself wishing that you could stay in that world a little bit longer?
Yes, that's a beautiful question. Honestly, I always talk about how this art is so ethereal, and the beauty and the horror of the beast is like, look, if you hate your show, you'll never see it again. But if you loved your show, you'll never see it again. And when you tape improv, I still don't believe they've cracked the code on how to do it for TV.
Yeah.
And I think John's the one who's come the closest by turning it into the actors have the beautiful freedom of improvising, and he's ripping out his hair in large tufts, trying to edit all and make it perfect, and make it narrative and make it funny, and it's amazing. But just the beauty of improvising. I think UCB did one of those shows on Bravo or something.
Yeah.
Did they do one of their Armando-like shows,
Yeah.
ASCAT? And I think they had to film the show twice. They had all their heavy hitters there.
Yeah.
But they didn't just do a show and we saw it live. You know what I mean? It became a taped thing that ended up Yeah. I have friends who do Whose Line Is It Anyway, the tour of it.
Yeah.
And I said, so how is it? And he goes, I think people panic about the comedy sometimes and worry about making sure that funny shtick is in, which
Yeah.
makes me sad because, again, the light of the laugh is not what affirms me, is that they're there and they want to go on that road trip with me. And that's why I also think it's just such a gorgeous, fleeting art.
Yeah. I love that you can't replicate it. I love that you can't repeat it. I just love that. I just think it's fantastic.
People will come up to me years later and mention a show I did and say, oh my God, you said this thing. I'm like, oh my God, that's so funny. And they're like, you said that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I don't even own this. I feel like we're a conduit. That's why I don't want to become too self-conscious. I'd like to become conscious of self, because I feel like we're a conduit to the audience's imagination. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm in it, but I'm not in it for me. We're all part of this journey because they're noticing sometimes the things
for
that
sure. There's a feedback loop happening that is really cool.
Yeah.
I've always, from my experience with improv, when someone creates the environment, and the environment also is very important in anthropology or archaeology, because Darwinian evolution is humans responding to the environment. But when you create the environment, and even though it's like you can't really see it, but everybody knows that it's there, it's like you've all created that space. And when the audience sees you step around something that you've created, to me, that's always such a beautiful moment when everyone for that split second can actually see it there and know what you're stepping
It's
around.
like your glass cube when you're doing mime. We see it before you show us that it's there.
Right. Anyway, Susan, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but thank you so much for coming on the show and discussing
Our
this
first
with
guest, everybody.
Yes.
Woo!
You always remember your first.
Yeah.
You do that, or did Spunky do that?
I did it. I'm the only one who can do it.
Whoa.
And I could do this. Professor
Welcome
McCray
to
likes this.
Anthro with yes.
It's an
This
honor.
is hard hitting. This is hard hitting.
I would hang with you guys whether it were a podcast or not.
Oh, thank you. Same here. It was fascinating. Fascinating.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Mr. McCray.
No, I was going to say I had tons of other questions, but obviously we can't.
Well, we're going to have, if you'll agree, Ms. Messing back, because, there's a lot going on in that head, and we'd like to exploit it to get more listeners on our podcast.
It's a very little brain, honey.
It's but there's a lot in there. She has a little
but
head.
I will say...
and whereas Professor McCray has a huge head. Huge.
Yeah.
Like, we can't get a hat on that guy.
I once said trying to put a hat on, or like a stocking cap on my head was like trying to put a sock on a bowling ball.
I thought you were going to say like a small condom on a big dick.
No.
That he can do. Hey, good night, everybody.
I will say, though, to all the anthropologists out there, I started out kind of as a joke saying that improv theater is the culmination of evolution. But the more I research it this week, I'm completely serious now that if you want to see all of these human traits in action, happening in real time in front of you, all of these things that gave us an advantage, go see an improv show.
Yeah.
Because you will see it happening.
Oof.
Yes.
Responding to environments, you see group dynamics, you see communication, you see innovation immediately on stage, whatever happens in split seconds.
Lots of
mistakes, those things that took us 3 million years to figure out, you see happening on stage now in an improv show. And
that's your TED Talk, Spunky.
Yeah, it is. It's an excellent TED Talk. Well, this is human number 2 signing off.
And this is human number 1. Thank you again for listening. Thank you, Susan, for joining us. And be sure to check us out on our Facebook and also our Instagram. And Susan, get ready to enjoy the best socks you've ever had.
They really are. They're amazing socks.
Watson and Company socks. Beautiful colors. And they will be in the mail shortly with your friendship bracelet. Thanks for listening, everybody. We love you guys. Susan, John, thanks. We love you.
Thank
we'll talk
you.
to you later.
Thanks, Susan.
Bye.
Bye.